Imagine an old wooden house on the edge of the world. It stands on the shore where the waves eternally dance with the rocks leaving foam on the wet sand. The house creaks softly in the wind, its walls breathing stories only the ocean knows. It always smells of salt and wood, as if nature itself is trying to embrace you. When you open the door, a faint aroma of lavender and old books greets you. The air is thick with calm and silence, wrapping around you like a warm blanket. In the kitchen there's a copper kettle still warm from recent boiling. You pour yourself a cup of tea and sit by the large window where the endless sea stretches out. Rain taps gently on the roof, leaving transparent droplets on the glass, slowly sliding down, tracing paths one after another. Waves crash against the rocks, their sound like a lullaby, rhythmic and serene. Far off near the water's edge there is a figure, a man in a hat, walking slowly along the shore, his head bowed against the wind. His steps leave traces on the wet sand which quickly disappear under the pressure of the waves. You take a sip of tea, warmth spreads through your body. Time seems to stop, only the sound of the waves, the crackle of the fire in the fireplace, and the gentle tapping of the rain remain. You breathe in the peace and feel every muscle relax. Thoughts become light as air. You close your eyes and the whole world fades away, leaving only you and this place, a place where time has no meaning, where the waves whisper their secrets and the wind tells stories that will never be forgotten. The world can wait. You will stay here a little longer, listening to the lullaby of the old house by the shore. I remember the first time I saw the house by the shore. It was early morning, the fog still clinging to the rocks like a ghostly veil. The wooden walls creaked as if whispering secrets to the wind. Salt hung heavy in the air, mixed with the faint aroma of lavender and something else, something ancient. I stood there for a while, just listening, waves crashing against the rocks, sending sprays of foam into the mist. There was a stillness, a kind of peace that I hadn't felt in years. It felt like time had slowed to a crawl, like every second stretched into eternity. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the sea air. It was sharp and cold, waking up something inside me, something I didn't know was asleep. I remember pushing the door open. It groaned like it hadn't been touched in decades. Dust swirled up in the sunlight that poured in through the cracked windows. The floorboards creaked under my weight, each step echoing in the silence. It smelled of old books and seaweed, like memories left to rot but untouched by time. I walked through the hall, my hand grazing the walls, feeling the roughness of the wood worn by years of wind and salt. There were pictures hanging in crooked frames, faces I didn't recognize, staring back with eyes that seemed to follow me with every step. It was like the house was watching me, learning my movements, remembering. I wandered deeper into the house, each room revealing fragments of stories frozen in time. The living room was cluttered with dusty furniture covered in white sheets, like ghosts standing still, waiting for something or someone. The fireplace was cold, ashes long settled, but the scent of burned wood still lingered. I reached out and pulled the sheet off an armchair. Dust puffed into the air, dancing in the sunlight that leaked through the blinds. I sat down, and for a moment the room felt alive, like it was remembering. The crackle of fire, the whisper of conversation, the weight of time hung heavy around me, as if the walls held on to every memory, refusing to let go. There is something about silence that forces you to confront your own thoughts. It strips away the noise, the distractions, leaves you alone with whatever you've been running from. I sat there in that armchair, and for the first time in what felt like years, I listened to my own thoughts. They crept out of the corners of my mind like shadows at dusk. Questions I had buried long ago resurfaced. Who am I when everything is stripped away? Who am I without the city, the noise, the people? Am I just a collection of routines, an echo of expectations, or is there something deeper beneath the layers, something raw and untouched? I closed my eyes and breathed in the stillness of the room. The walls seemed to breathe with me, inhaling, exhaling, whispering their secrets. It felt like the house itself was trying to tell me something, to unravel the knots I had tied inside my own mind, as if the silence was a mirror reflecting back everything I had tried to avoid. I leaned back, sinking deeper into the cushions, and let the questions linger, unspoken but heavy with meaning. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen was dark, a single bar of signal barely holding on. I hesitated, then without thinking I pressed down until it turned off. The screen went black, and with it the world outside faded away. No news, no emails, no notifications, just silence, pure and uninterrupted. I set it down on the dusty table next to me and stared at it for a moment. It felt like cutting a lifeline, but also like finding freedom. I walked around the room, opening drawers, finding old letters, maps, photographs, some of them so faded you could barely make out the faces. I found a radio on the shelf, its metal rusted and speakers torn. I tried to turn it on, but nothing happened. It was dead like everything else here. I realized that this place existed outside of time, outside of noise. I was completely disconnected. No voices, no screens, just the whisper of the wind and the distant roar of the waves. It felt like I had stepped out of the world entirely, like I was standing between moments where nothing and everything existed at once. At first my mind kept wandering back to the phone, even though it was off, even though I knew no one was trying to reach me. I kept thinking about it, about the need to check the world beyond this house, but gradually that feeling faded like waves pulling back from the shore, leaving nothing but smooth sand. I realized how rare it was for a man like me to just exist without the constant pull of notifications, of headlines demanding attention. It felt unnatural at first, almost unsettling, but then calmness settled in, like the house itself was guiding me toward something deeper, a stillness I hadn't known in years. I sat back down in the armchair, letting the silence wash over me. I could hear my own breathing, the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. I wasn't waiting for anything anymore, not for a message or an update or a like. It was just me and the sound of the waves, like a slow realization that all those little anxieties had no place here. Without the world pressing in, I could finally hear my own thoughts, not the restless ones driven by news or emails, but the quiet ones, the kind that only come when everything else fades away. As the hours slipped by, the sense of disconnection grew stronger, not just from the world outside, but from everything that once seemed important. I found myself wandering through the old house, touching the walls, running my hand over the cracked paint, the splintered wood. It felt like the house was alive, breathing with me, sharing its silence. I moved towards the back of the house, where a narrow staircase curled upwards. It was steep, the wood groaning beneath my weight. With each step, dust floated in the air, catching the light like tiny stars suspended in time. The higher I climbed, the quieter it became, as if the world itself had faded away. When I reached the top, there was a single door slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stepped inside. It was a study. Papers were scattered across a wooden desk. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that smelled of age and secrets. A window overlooked the sea waves crashing against the rocks far below. I walked to the desk and ran my hand over the surface. It was smooth, polished by years of use. There was an old typewriter resting in the center, keys worn and faded, like it had been waiting for someone to return to it. For a moment I just stood there, feeling the weight of time pressing in around me. There was no noise, no distractions, just the distant rhythm of the ocean and the whisper of the wind outside. I reached out, my hand hesitated, then pressed one of the keys. It clicked softly, echoing in the silence like the first word of a story yet to be told. There was a stillness in the room, a kind of peace that settled into my bones. I looked out the window. The waves moved with a rhythm that seemed eternal, unchanging, the kind of rhythm that made you forget time even existed. I took a deep breath, feeling the salt air fill my lungs. It was like the world had been paused just for me, a place untouched by noise or rush or urgency, only the sound of the sea whispering its secrets to the wind. I sat down at the desk, brushing off a layer of dust that had settled thick and soft like snow. My fingers grazed the old typewriter, its keys cool and familiar, like shaking hands with an old friend. I pressed one key, then another, the soft click echoing in the silence. It was oddly satisfying, grounding, like I was placing my mark in time. No notifications, no screens, just the gentle echo of each letter, like a heartbeat, steady and sure. In that silence I felt my thoughts slow down, unravel like tangled thread. I wasn't thinking of work or deadlines or the endless noise of the outside world. My mind was quiet, clear, like the surface of a still lake. The house seemed to breathe with me, as if it understood the need for silence, for simplicity, for space to just be. I stayed there for what felt like hours, just listening to the waves, the soft hum of the wind outside, the creak of the wooden walls around me. It felt like the house was alive, breathing its own slow rhythm, and I was a part of it. For the first time in years I didn't feel rushed or restless. I just felt present, grounded, a part of something timeless and still. It's strange how silence can make you hear things you've never listened to before. Not he outside world, but the one inside, the one that whispers between thoughts in the spaces you usually fill with noise. Sitting there in that stillness, I started to wonder why I had come here, why this place felt like a sanctuary, why it was easier to breathe, easier to think, like the walls themselves had absorbed all the noise and left only the essence of being. Maybe it wasn't the house, maybe it was me, maybe I had been running from my own thoughts, filling every empty space with distraction, news, emails, messages, anything to avoid hearing what was always there waiting beneath the surface. I leaned back in the chair, the wood creaking softly beneath me, and I closed my eyes, the waves crashing against the rocks, the distant call of seagulls, the wind whispering through the cracks in the walls. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly present, like all those years of rushing, of running, of chasing after things that never mattered were gone, stripped away by the simplicity of this place. I realized I had spent half my life outside of my own mind, always looking outward, never inward. It was here in the silence that I could finally hear myself, the real me, not the one I presented to the world, not the version that performed for others, but the one that existed, quietly waiting to be heard. It was like coming home, not to a place but to a feeling, something familiar yet long forgotten, a return to stillness, to simplicity, to myself. I sat there for what felt like hours, maybe it was minutes, or maybe it was days. Time had melted away into the rhythm of the waves, the slow breath of the wind through the open window. There was no rush, no urgency, just the steady pulse of the ocean, the heartbeat of the world. I felt like I was part of it, like I had been pulled into its tide, carried along its gentle current without resistance. I closed my eyes and listened, really listened. The sound of my own breathing, the creak of the wood beneath me, the whisper of leaves outside, like the earth itself was speaking in a language too old to remember. In that silence I found something I didn't know. I had been searching for peace, not the fleeting kind that slips away as soon as you reach for it, but the deep stillness that comes when you finally stop running. I had spent my life chasing moments, distractions, fleeting things that disappeared as quickly as they came, but here in this old house with its whispering walls and ancient wood, I found stillness, I found myself. When I finally opened my eyes, the world felt different, clearer, lighter, like a weight had been lifted from my chest. The phone lay silent on the table, untouched, forgotten. There was no need to reach for it, no desire to check the world outside. I was here fully and completely, and for the first time in my life that was enough. The days drifted by in quiet simplicity. The house became my world, its walls my shelter, its silence my companion. Each morning I woke to the sound of waves whispering against the rocks, the salty breeze slipping through the open window like a gentle reminder that the world was still there, but distant, far enough away that its noise could not reach me. I stopped counting the days. Time was no longer something to measure, it was something to feel, to breathe, with each moment stretching out like the horizon, unbroken, unhurried. There was a beauty in the stillness, an understanding that life did not need to be rushed, that sometimes the greatest journey is the one inward. I would sit by the window with a cup of tea, watching the sea stretch out into forever, feeling the weight of the world slip away with each breath. I was nowhere and everywhere all at once, just a part of the rhythm of things, the gentle sway of the tide, the creak of the wood beneath my feet, the whisper of the wind through the leaves. I had found something here in this old house by the shore, something I never knew I needed, the simple act of being, not chasing, not striving, just being, and in that stillness I had finally found my way home.